YouTube, Mr. Incredible's back, and I'm ready to react to What If Ash Woke Up on Time going to Unova. Let's go.
What if Ash Ketchum woke up on time on the day he picked his starter? What if instead of being limited to just Pikachu, Ash could have picked any of the 3 Kanto starters? How would everything have played out in a world where he started his journey with Squirtle? Well, in this series we've already covered the Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, and Sinnoh regions, so today it's time to move on to Unova.
Oh, that's
okay, so we're getting everything started with Ash taking a trip to the Unova region with his mom and Professor Oak. The only Pokemon that Ash brings with him is his Blastoise, as is tradition. Surprisingly, Team Rocket will be heading to Unova 2 on Giovanni's orders.
Oh, that's
in the original timeline,
Rocket.
they spot Ash on the plane and confront him upon arrival in Unova, but that's not happening anymore. They aren't obsessed with or even aware of Blastoise unlike Pikachu, so there's no confrontation required.
What?
Another change without Pikachu present is that Ash heads straight inside with Delia and Professor Oak.
No, I'll have to disagree with that. I think Team Rocket would actually find interest in a Blastoise with much higher level than the Pikachu that we saw in the anime. And it knows Ice Punch, Dig, Hydro Pump, and Skull Bash. Why would Team Rocket not have any interest of wanting to get a Blastoise? Like, your job as a Team Rocket member is to steal Pokemon that has great value. And Blastoise fits that definition, at least in this story.
Type sensed Zekrom's approach and kept Ash outside, which led to them getting stuck in the electrical storm that it created. Blastoise senses nothing though. Blastoise is in full-on vacation mode. As a result, Ash never sees Zekrom.
Oh wow. So they're basically saying that unlike Blastoise in the story, Pikachu is a lot more intuitive and has this feeling where what's going on. That might be the main reason why Ash got a little bit farther, because of Pikachu.
And just assumes it's a thunderstorm like everyone else. Once the storm clears, Professor Juniper arrives and escorts Ash, Delia, and Oak back to her lab in Nuvema Town. A beginner trainer called Trip arrives shortly after them, and he's pretty awful. Ash learns that he's there to select his starter Pokemon, which excites him as he gets to meet the Unova starters for the first time. As you would expect, his big brain is on full display as the starters are introduced.
That's a fire type! Nice and fiery!
Close enough. Okay, not really. That was edited, but you weren't even surprised, were you? Something important to note before continuing on.
I was thinking the same too. It had to be the dubbing to make Ash sound like he's really dumb, which I personally believe, but you never know, because before this was edited by people in America, it was worked by people in Japan. So I wouldn't even be surprised that it was the editing.
Best Wishes marked something of a reset for the Pokemon series. The creators seemingly wanted to redo the Kanto dynamics, with Ash being a brainless moron who catches a good number of Pokemon.
Oh my god, that would be a headache.
He clashes with the almost gym leader girl he's traveling with, who's obsessed with one typing and terrified of another, often because of his immaturity or general idiocy. Then the boy accompanying him on his journey is the gym leader from the first gym Ash visited, and he's in charge of all the navigation and cooking. They basically just copied and pasted the core elements. The problem here is that Ash can't just suddenly forget everything he knows about Pokemon. So in our timeline, his brain doesn't just suddenly hit the reset button upon entering Unova.
Thank goodness!
Anyway, Trip selects Snivy as his starter and leaves the lab ready to begin his journey. Ash follows him out, keen to ask about the Unova League and the gyms in the region. Although initially dismissive, Trip's attitude changes when he spots Blastoise, who's trailed Ash out. The new trainer challenges Ash to a battle, and this shouldn't come as any surprise to you, but Blastoise annihilates Snivy. Type advantage or no, this one was not close. Trip sets off somewhat embarrassed as Ash heads back inside to talk to his mom. Having decided to continue on in the Unova region, he tells her and Professor Oak that he won't be returning to Kanto with them. That's all good, and without Pikachu all clogged up, there's no return appearance from Zekrom. That means Iris keeps heading for the pier instead of traveling towards the lab where the second storm was centered in the original timeline. So when Ash leaves on his new adventure, he doesn't encounter Iris shortly after leaving Juniper's lab. As we skip the reset and Ash isn't an idiot now, he succeeds in battling and catching a spring-form Deerling. Then he battles and catches a Pidove the next day to take his party to 3 almost immediately. Further down the road, he falls into a hole, which seems about right, but he's rescued by Dan. The boy tells him his whole story, but you don't really need to know it. There's lots happening with this Sandile though, who Ash spots kidnapping the fiery Oshawott from Juniper's lab.
Oh,
Ash chases them down and
Sandile.
eventually realizes that Sandile was trying to protect Oshawott and all the local Pokemon from some geysers, as you do. Eventually, we get to a point where there are a bunch of Pokemon stranded on a patch of rock surrounded by boiling water. Now, look, Patrat, fine. Deerling, fine. P-Dove, what are you doing?
For real.
You can fly, just fly to the other side.
Exactly.
It's like 10 meters tops. After the Sandile make a bridge, they...
I never understood the concept of just having P-Dove standing by with the other two Pokemon that was mentioned. If you have wings, unlike your other Pokemon friends, you know you're going to be fine and so are your friends regardless. So just fly out of there.
I'll make a bridge they literally cross by flying anyway, so what was the holdup? I'm spending too much time on this. Ash and Blastoise help rescue the Pokemon, including Oshawott, who with Professor Juniper's blessing takes the team to 4. Sandile we'll get back to later. Without Iris around to tell Ash about the Pokemon Battle Club in Accumula Town, he never visits and as a result isn't around when everyone goes on the hunt for a mysterious Pokemon. That turns out to be Tepig, so let's hope somebody else found it because otherwise it may have starved, which would be pretty grim. Ash reaches Strion City where he meets Silent, who brings him to the local...
I really did feel bad for Tepig. It was just giving me those Damien Charmander vibes.
Just like the original timeline, Ash requests to battle all 3 gym leaders because that seems pretty in character. Chili, Cress, and Silent decide it will be a best 2 out of 3 matchup for the gym badge. As Tepig and Pikachu aren't on Ash's team anymore, it's Blastoise who faces Pansear and Deerling who takes on Panpour. Blastoise makes light work of the fire type with Hydro Pump, but despite the type advantage, Deerling comes up short in a close matchup. That leaves just Silent, and Ash needs a win to earn the trio badge. This plays out just the same, with Oshawott overcoming the odds to knock off Silent's Pansage and win Ash's first Unova gym badge. Obviously, that's not the last we'll see of Silent. The Strion gym leader is intrigued by Ash and asks to accompany him on his journey, which Ash gladly accepts.
I'm not gonna lie to you. If I had anybody who had high interest in me like that and that was close to me, I would have told them to back up, give me personal space, or don't bother me at all anymore.
Let's ignore the fact that Silent's now left his 2 brothers to run a gym where they'll have to explain to every single challenger why their badge is called the Trio Badge.
Right?
After leaving Strion City, Ash encounters a Snivy stealing some of Silent's scones, I think? There are of course several failed catch attempts, but Ash eventually succeeds in capturing the grass starter. That makes for 5 Pokemon right before he reaches Luxuria Town. It's there that he has his first experience of a Pokemon Battle Club and ends up requesting a battle with Trip. Keen for some revenge after being humiliated back in November Town, Trip accepts, calling for a full 6-on-6 battle. As he only has 5 Pokemon, Ash tells him that the best he can do is a 5-on-5, to which Trip reluctantly agrees. Tranquil starts the battle for Trip while Oshawott is up first for Ash. The matchup has barely begun when a critical hit on Aerial Ace knocks out the water type. Deerling doesn't fare much better. After landing a couple of tackles, the seasoned Pokemon also falls to Aerial Ace. Wanting to establish some sort of foothold in the match, Ash calls on Blastoise next, who manages to knock...
Earlier he mentioned to make sure that Ash doesn't forget about Pokemon, but he's kinda is still bringing that Ash that forgot about Pokemon in a way, just by how the story was going.
Tranquil with Hydro Pump. Then it's time for a rematch. Trip calls out his Servine, who has evolved since his last battle with Blastoise, but it's still not enough. Blastoise is too powerful, and after a back and forth battle, an Ice Punch finishes off Servine to tie things up.
Easy.
When Trip sends out Frillish, Ash switches in Snivy for her first battle. Catching Trip off guard with Attract, Snivy picks up a relatively straightforward win with Leaf Storm. Vanillite comes out 4th for Trip and forces another switch from Ash, who recalls Snivy to send in P-Dove. An Ice Beam almost instantly puts an end to that though. Snivy returns to battle, but with Trip prepared for Attract now, it's a much tougher task. In the end, a Leaf Storm and Ice Beam connect simultaneously, knocking out both Pokemon to take the battle into a one-on-one. Unfortunately for Trip, that final face-off sees his Litwick taking on Ash's Blastoise. Even with some wear and tear from the earlier matchups, Blastoise has far too much for Litwick and scores the win with a Hydro Pump.
Okay.
It's another victory for Ash, who thanks his new rival for a great battle. Trip admits defeat but tells Ash that other than Blastoise and Snivy, his Pokemon are pathetic. Ash obviously disagrees, but he leaves Luxuria Town more determined.
Well, I can say one thing. For this story, Ash in Unova is kind of smarter than the original Ash, but at the same time, his Pokemon aren't as entirely pathetic as the other Pokemon. But then again, we gotta see moving forward with the story.
Never to prove the worth of his other Pokemon. Following that, without Iris around, Axew never leads everyone to Dwebble, so Silent never catches the Hermit Crab. What doesn't change though is Ash's meeting with the Trubbish squad. Although it's Blastoise who Sandile returns to challenge, the outcome remains the same. Ash helps out a kindergarten teacher with her students, and her grandmother Karina rewards him with a Pokemon egg. Next up, we have a brief meeting with Bianca, who delivers Ash's badge case and then captures him in Chino. Sort of irrelevant, but I guess it's worth mentioning. Once they reach Nacrene City, Ash heads for the gym where he challenges Lenora. With Tripp's words ringing in his ears, Ash decides to use Oshawott and Deerling in the gym, and the two fail to get the job done. Lenora's main strategy is to use Roar with Lillipup, and after forcing a switch, go out to Watchog and use Mean Look. It interrupts Ash's flow, and he fails to earn his second gym badge first time around. Silent suggests he should visit the local Pokemon Battle Club to get in some training to increase Oshawott and Deerling's speed. The training sessions with Don George not only help to up their speed, but both Pokemon learn new moves, with Deerling mastering Double Team and Oshawott sort of halfway figuring out Aqua Jet. During his rematch with Lenora, the drastic improvement is impossible to ignore. Although it's a little bit awkward, Oshawott takes down Watchog with Aqua Jet, knocking itself out in the process. Then Deerling uses Double Team to disorient the now evolved Herdier before scoring a knockout with Double Kick to earn Ash the win. Basic badge in hand, Ash leaves Nacrene City behind and heads for Pinwheel Forest with Silent. Before they make it there, the Pokemon egg that Ash received hatches, revealing a Scraggy. No change there, but he will be altering things in Pinwheel Forest. Without Pikachu around, Ash never encounters Sewaddle in the tangle of trees, and as a direct result of that, he doesn't meet Berg there either. Having never left the path, Ash and Silent make it through Pinwheel Forest with ease, and their reward is a meeting with Burgundy. She's a fellow connoisseur, or connoisseuse I guess, and she hates Silent's guts. Well, to each their own.
I hate her
It's not
guts.
massively important to Ash's journey like Bianca, but it will be easier later on if you're familiar with the plethora of friends and foes that Unova has to offer. Speaking of friends and or foes, the Sunglasses Sandile sets a trap for Ash and Blastoise so it can battle them. Ash is happy to oblige, but they get interrupted by some Ducklet that steals Sandile's sunglasses and Ash's hat, leading to a team-up.
Oh, I couldn't stand it.
They eventually get all of their stuff back, with Silent even going so far as to catch the Ducklet that stole his
I couldn't
Cloche.
stand those Pokemon.
After all of that, Blastoise and Sandile get back to their battle, with Ash's starter picking up the win. When Ash and Silent reach Castelia City, they meet Berg, who's worried about the local bug-type Pokemon. While investigating in the sewers, they find an injured Venipede stuck in a pipe. Ash literally poisons himself to rescue it before an entire swarm shows up and chases them out of the sewers. When they get back above ground, there are Venipede everywhere, and Tripp's there attempting to destroy them all. Berg eventually convinces everyone to help him round the Venipede up into a group in Castelia's central plaza. While working to round up the Venipede, Ash's Pidove evolves into a Tranquil after some help from Tripp's own flying type. Once they've rounded them all up, Ash catches the Venipede he rescued earlier, because of course he does. The only reason I can come up with for him not catching it in the original timeline is that he just added Sewaddle, but that's not an issue here. Oh, also, Ash sends Snivy back to Professor Juniper's lab here because that's his 7th Pokemon. There'll be lots of switching in and out from now on that I won't be mentioning. Just know that Blastoise is always on the team, but other than that, it's an almost constant rotation. Anyway, you're probably wondering why all the Venipede were gathering in Castelia City, and the show never answered that question.
What?
There were 2 episodes that never aired, but it makes no sense for them not to happen in this story, so I'm just going to run through them quickly without any footage available. Okay, so in the Desert Resort, Team Rocket have been doing some stuff with the Meteorite, which is the reason Giovanni sent them to Unova in the first place. Jesse, James, and Meowth's interference with the Meteorite caused all of the chaos with the Venipede. Giovanni's plan is apparently to take control of Unova by creating imbalances in the weather and energy flow of the planet using the Meteorite. In the end, Team Plasma end up stealing it from Team Rocket to enact their evil plans, but it makes lots of Pokemon way stronger and they end up destroying it. Okay, right, let's move on. After pretending the world didn't almost just end, Ash heads for the Castelia gym to take on Berg, who seems to have completely forgotten about the Venipede. The battle begins with Ash's Deerling taking on Berg's Dwebble, and after a close matchup, a double kick gives Ash the lead. Whirlipede's up next for Berg, and Steamroller ends up knocking out Deerling to even up the match. Much to Silent's surprise, Ash sends out Venipede next, which seems like an odd choice. As Whirlipede's only attacks are Steamroller, Poison Sting, and Solar Beam though, it's actually an accidental stroke of genius. Venipede gets going with a super effective rollout, and the constant clashes with Whirlipede's Steamroller cause Ash's bug to evolve. Now on a level playing field, Ash's Whirlipede finishes off Berg's with one final blast and rollout to take the gym leader down to 1.
Okay.
Berg calls on Leavanny last and starts by breaking the rollout streak with Protect. Eventually it knocks out Whirlipede with a Hyper Beam to leave Ash with only one Pokemon too. Tranquil comes out last and with Leavanny recharging gets off a free quad-effective Air Cutter.
This should be an easy
From that point,
win.
Ash was in complete control. Although Leavanny puts up an admirable fight, Tranquil seals the win with a gust, earning Ash the insect badge without ever
Let's
using
go.
Blastoise. That does it for Castelia City, so let's see what's next. Outside of the city, our duo meets Stefan, who battles Ash with his Blitzle, losing to Oshawott. Again, we're just establishing characters for later. Then, without Iris around, Ash never crosses paths with Trip on his way to Nimbasa City. That starts a bit of a domino effect. For starters, Ash doesn't interrupt him, so Trip succeeds in catching a Palpitoad. Then, without the rivals battling, Trip never shows Ash that Oshawott's keeping its eyes closed during Aquajet. That means Ash doesn't start training at the lake to help Oshawott, so he never catches a Palpitoad of his own, and so never has Stunfisk. Basically, Trip has a Palpitoad.
That was one of the Pokemon I liked that Ash had on the team was Palpitoad. But, oh, man. I liked it, Palpitoad. Really, Into the Unknown? He doesn't get Palpitoad? Oh, come on, man.
Ash does not, and Silent didn't get Stunfisk. Oh, and Oshawott's still struggling with Aquajet. Ash does still catch a Roggenrola though, as he and Silent thwart
that's
when
another
Team
one I
Rocket's
like.
friends in a cave somewhere between Castelia and Nimbasa. That finally takes us into Nimbasa Town, which is a slightly confusing thing to name a town right outside of Nimbasa City. Although apparently it predates the city, so I guess Nimbasa City is to blame. Anyway, Ash and Silent decide to compete in the Nimbasa Battle Tournament, aka the Club Battle, along with Trip, Stefan, Burgundy, Bianca, and Iris. In the first round, Ash's Whirlipede takes down Burgundy's Stoutland, Silent's Ducklet KO's Trip's Girder, Stefan's Zebstrika knocks off Bianca's Minccino, and Iris's Tepig defeats Jimmy Ray's Watchog. Yep, as you probably realized from the thumbnail, Iris wound up catching the Tepig from Accumula Town. She was there and searching for it at the time of the alarm being tripped, so it ended up joining her instead. That's some good news, because it felt a little bit like Tepig was gonna die for a second there. In the quarterfinals, Ash and Silent advanced using Snivy and Ducklet respectively, while Iris takes on Stefan with her Excadrill. Although it's still disobedient at this point, after taking a few attacks from Sork, Excadrill takes it upon itself to fight back and win. The matchup intrigues Silent, who wants to help bring Iris and her Excadrill closer together. There's no chance for him to do that in the semi-finals though, as Iris selects Axew for her battle with his Pansage. The Dragon-type learns Outrage during the battle and ends up picking up the win to send Iris through to the final. After the loss, Silent compliments Iris and Axew and then asks if he can help her out with her Excadrill. Ash also manages to win his semi-final, knocking out Dino's Darumaka with his Blastoise.
That's easy.
When the final rolls around the next day, Iris and Excadrill are ready to face Ash and Blastoise. It takes a bit of time, but
Now, in the original, Ash battled Excadrill with his Pikachu, but I'm curious to know, would he find a way to mess up against Iris with Blastoise? Let's find out.
Felt apology from Iris, Excadrill begins to trust her again. The battle is fierce with both Pokemon landing big hits, but a Blastoise dig catches Iris off guard and leads to Ash winning.
Okay.
After both having great battles with Iris and enjoying her company over the course of the tournament, Ash and Silent ask her to join them on their journey. She accepts their offer, so we're back on course with the original timeline, but there's one important thing to note here. As Ash isn't on idiot mode in this version of Unova, Iris can just be a nice normal companion and not an exasperated babysitter. So that's an improvement. That does it for Nimbasa Town, so let's move on to Nimbasa City. There's a few things we could talk about from Ash's time in this city, but the main thing we need to focus on is his gym battle. Without Palpitoad and Pikachu, there's another change up in terms of team selection for the battle against Elisa. Also, Ash isn't an idiot. Well, Ash isn't a complete idiot here, so he doesn't just bring one Pokemon with him to the gym.
Now hold on. I had an issue with Ash doing that in the original, that he just stormed off just to substitute another Pokemon. He can't do that. When you leave out of the gym, that's an instant disqualification. You are not supposed to leave the gym if you are in a battle with the gym leader, especially not the way Ash just did right there. That would have been an automatic disqualification.
Zebstrika, and Ash starts by calling for Leech Seed. Deerling managed to land a powerful jump kick on Zebstrika, but before long a flame charge gives Elisa the lead. Blastoise replaces Deerling and uses Dig to dodge a wild charge, with the pit even tripping Zebstrika. That allows Dig to land hard while the electric type is vulnerable, and it causes the knockout to tie things up. Elisa sends out her Emolga next, and after being hit by a Hydro Pump, she connects with a track to temporarily shut down Blastoise. After realizing the problem, Ash makes a switch out to his final Pokemon, Snivy. A track no longer plays a part, but Emolga still has
They're
the
both
type
females.
advantage. Snivy puts in everything she has, landing blows with Vine Whip and Leaf Storm, but Emolga comes out on top, scoring the knockout with an Aerial Ace. That leaves Ash in a 1-on-2 with a Water type and an Electric type gym. Although Dig can't be used offensively, Ash does employ it to great effect in his effort to stop a track from landing. Although Blastoise is hit by an Electro Ball, he eventually strikes Emolga with an Ice Punch to take the battle into a 1v1. Elisa's final Pokemon is Tynamo, and it only knows Tackle, so Blastoise wins. I don't care how strong Elisa's Tynamo is, it isn't beating even a weakened Blastoise. One Hydro Pump washes away Tynamo, finishing off Elisa to earn Ash the Gold Badge. Before he leaves Nimbasa City, Ash meets and battles Alder, the Unova region champion. The battle pits Blastoise against Bouffalante, and Ash seems to be on the cusp of winning because Alder literally falls asleep. They call off the battle after Bouffalante attempts to murder Alder, and then Ash...
Now, what kind of champion is he to just be sleeping during a battle? I'm going to have to guess that Alter in this story and the original, that he was just too old or he just don't get enough sleep. Every trainer must have their perfectly good sleep. It's a must.
Let's move on. Once they reach Driftveil City, there's more minor stuff that we can skip over to get to Ash's gym battle. Unlike the last gym battle, this one plays out exactly like it did in the original timeline.
I like that this
Ash's
battle...
Oshawott defeats Clay's Krokorok before falling to Palpitoad. Snivy then knocks out Palpitoad, but Excadrill takes her down to leave us in another one-on-one. Ash calls on Roggenrola last because even when he isn't on complete idiot mode, he just does some nonsensical stuff sometimes. Of course, it works out in the end. Roggenrola evolves into Boldor, knocking out Excadrill to earn Ash another win and the Quake badge.
I mean, in the end, Ash still did win that badge fair and square. But I will say this, it was a nonsensical move for him to use a rock Pokemon against a ground steel type, which something Ash normally does mostly every battles, using a type disadvantage to beat a Pokemon that has a type disadvantage over you. But here in this episode, you would think Ash was starting to use his head more by using both a water and grass type to fight against Clay, knocking the first two Pokemon out with those two types, which was until Rockerola shows up, and that was where it led, like, oh, Ash is still being Ash. But in the end, Ash, like I said, still won that badge.
After finishing up in the gym, Ash, Iris, and Silence set off on the road to Mistralton City. On the way there, the now evolved Sunglasses Krokorok returns for another face-off with Blastoise.
Is Ash going to get
when
that
the battle
Pokemon?
Ends in another Krokorok loss, Ash offers the ground type a place on his team, and it's...
Okay!
That's Ash's 8th Unova capture, and it was like 62 episodes in the making, so it's about time.
I'm about to
Once
say.
Ash and friends reach Mistralton City, he heads straight for the gym where he meets Skyla and
I
experiences
couldn't
her
stand
system
her.
of air battles. The gym leader just looks at the team her opponent plans to use and then makes an educated guess for whether or not they'll win. If she judges them capable of winning, they receive a jet badge. This doesn't fly with Ash, who requests a proper battle for his face-off with Skyla. It takes some convincing, but she eventually agrees to a 3-on-3 battle. Just like the original timeline, Krokorok and Tranquil combine to take down Swoobat, who gets the better of the bespectacled Croc. Ash recalls Tranquil after some back and forth against Skyla's Unpheasant and sends out his starter Pokemon. This time it's Blastoise instead of Pikachu, but the result's all the same. Blastoise knocks out Unpheasant, leaving Skyla with only her Swanna. The water flying type actually manages to overcome Blastoise to leave Ash with just his Tranquil. As she did in the original timeline, Tranquil evolves into an Unpheasant to help her get past Swanna and earn the win for Ash. That convinces Skyla to call it quits on air battles, which pleases her grandfather greatly. When she hands over the jet badge to Ash,
that battle definitely should humble her to become a better gym leader, because I did not like the way she displays gym battles by using what she visioned in her Pokemon, just bringing them out and just guess that they're going to beat them or not. Like, I hated that. I hated that as a fan. Like, what type of gym leader is she? She has to be the worst flying type gym leader I've just witnessed in Unova so far. But that's Unova for you.
Recommends that he head for Icirrus City next. On their way there, Ash, Iris, and Silence stop in Ambiga Town to compete in the Club Splosion. It's just like the club battle from Nimbasa Town, but this one encourages the use of fighting type Pokemon. It's not mandatory, just a sort of suggestion. We don't need to spend much time on this one though, because there's really no change from the original timeline. All of the usual suspects enter, with Silent and Iris losing in the quarterfinals using Pansage and Excadrill respectively. Ash advances one stage further, losing in the semi-finals with Scraggy. The final sees Stefan's Sawk taking on Montgomery's Throw, with the former picking up the win. So, good work Stefan, I guess. A few days later, in a practice battle against Iris's Tepig, Ash's Whirlipede evolves into Scolipede, becoming the second of his Unova Pokemon to reach its final stage. Then, in the Astilbe Town Pokemon Battle Club, everyone meets Tepig's original owner, Seamus. Apparently, there are no laws against literally tying up a Pokemon and leaving it to die, because Iris decides to settle things with a battle. Although Tepig's conflicted, he eventually gets into the heat of the battle, evolving into Pignite and beating his former trainer. Seamus tells Pignite it can join his team, but the fire type attacks him with Flamethrower, which With that, it's time to move on to Icirrus City and
serves him right.
The gym battle. The Icirrus City gym battle plays out similarly to the original timeline, with Krokorok and Scraggy still doing their part. This time though, Ash doesn't have Pignite available, so Boldore takes the last spot for the battle with Bryson. The battle still sees Scraggy knocking out Vanillish but losing to Cryogonal before Boldore returns the lead to Ash with a Rock Blast. Bear takes up loss for Bryson and it knocks off Boldore with a powerful Brine, leaving Ash with only Krokorok. It's a close fought battle, but in the end, Krokorok defeats Beartic to close the match and earn Ash the freeze badge. Bryson recommends that Ash
I will say this. Although I do like Krokorok, and it does know a rock move that's a good coverage against ice types, which I think that's kind of smart of Ash to use, but it was still dumb overall, because overall, Krokorok is a ground type. Ground Pokemon are very weak to ice. Like, ground moves can still give normal damage to ice, but as far as super effective damage, ice gives that much amount of damage to a ground Pokemon.
Pellucid City next, but he later learns that the Pellucid gym is closed. So instead, it's the gym in Verbank City that Ash sets his sights on. When they arrive in Verbank City, Ash, Iris, and Silent decide to help Luke with a film he's working on. While searching for a prop, Ash spots Meloetta, who he then ends up saving from serious injury. Meloetta disappears, but it takes an interest in Ash and begins following him. Anyway, the only important thing that really needs to be taken from this particular episode is that Crocodile sounds Irish for some reason.
With us around!
Crocodile!
I'm not entirely sure why Crocodile is more Irish than a guy named Seamus, but I guess that's just where we're at. With that brief moment covered, we've made it to the Verbank gym battle. Ash takes on Roxy, and at her insistence, it's a 6-on-3 matchup, with her letting her opponent use a full team.
Seriously?
Ash's final Unova gym battle gets underway with Roxy's Coughing taking on Boldore. Both Pokemon fight hard to wrest control from one another, but ultimately a super effective Coughing Gyro Ball takes down the Rock type. Ash sends out on Pheasant second, but sadly she meets the same fate as Boldore, fainting to a Gyro Ball. Already, Roxy has reduced her starting deficit to 1. Wanting to mix things up, Ash tries his luck with Deerling next. Roxy is surprised by the choice of a Grass type, which plays right into Coughing.
Oh, this is so unpredictable of Ash. Oh my goodness. You're battling for the last gym badge, and you're using a Deerling in a Poison type gym. This is Ash. This is Ash. There are things about Ash's battle that excites us, but pisses us off at the same time. That example, I'm just talking about using a grass type to beat a poison type Pokemon, which will not happen. But then we will never know.
Well, not hands. Bumps, I suppose? Deerling stays evasive using Double Team, but Coughing eventually connects with a Will-O-Wisp. Right when it seems like Deerling has nothing left to give, the seasoned Pokemon glows bright and begins to evolve. From the blinding light emerges Sawsbuck, who Ash learns now has access to the move Aromatherapy. Sawsbuck cures its burn with its new move and then attacks with Jump Kick. After 3 tough battles, Coughing falls to the not very effective move, finally giving Ash his first win of the match. Roxy's Scolipede is up next, and it really doesn't take long for the Poison Bug to knock off Sawsbuck. Ash returns the newly evolved Pokemon to its ball and sends out his own fully evolved bug. It's an absolute roller coaster, with the 2 Scolipedes seemingly leading at various points, but in the end, a Rock Smash and Rollout caused both Pokemon to faint at the same time. The next matchup sees Roxy's final Pokemon, Garbodor, taking on Ash's second to last Krokorok. Even though the Desert Croc has the type advantage, Garbodor is extremely hard to hit with Dig, so after landing a couple of powerful hits with Stone Edge, he falls to a Hyper Beam. When Blastoise comes out last, the brief recharging period allows an opportunity for the Water Starter to attack with Hydro Pump. It's not quite enough to finish things though, so the battle continues. Ash reverts to an old favourite, attempting to score the knockout with Dig, but Garbodor's Go-Go Gadget arms make it almost impossible to hit.
Okay, I definitely can see
Eventually,
that.
Roxy calls for a double slap, and with Garbodor in close, Blastoise lands an Ice Punch which freezes it in place. That takes dodging off the board, meaning Blastoise can finally hit with Dig, knocking out Garbodor to hand Ash the win.
Finally!
Roxy seems shocked to have finally lost, but congratulates Ash all the same as she
I
hands
will
over
say
the
this
token.
right here. Ash was very lucky that Roxanne allowed him to use the full 6 Pokemon while she uses just 3. Because those losses Ash had from the other Pokemon, his Pokemon did deserve to lose because of the bad choices he made. I will say that. There was no way you're going to have a Deerling that evolved into Sawsbuck in this story to beat a Poison type. Even if it did evolve into a Susbuck, it cannot beat a Poison type. It just can't.
That fills up the last spot in his badge case, qualifying Ash for the Unova League. It's still 3 months away though, so Ash, Iris, and Silent decide to spend some time exploring Verbank City. While they're doing that, they come across Cynthia, who tells them about the upcoming Pokemon World Tournament Junior Cup.
Junior Tournament Pokemon Cup of World Junior?
What? No, the Pokemon World Tournament Junior Cup. It's 5 words.
5,
Come on,
Ash.
Anyway, the trio all decide to compete, so they head to Undella Town with Cynthia, where there's a familiar face waiting for Ash. Hey, it's Dawn. She'll also be competing in the cup, and she's staying with Cynthia in the meantime. Also, Meloetta's here, by the way. That will become relevant later. Before the day of the tournament arrives, Iris catches a Dragonite who was injured and causing some issues at a power plant. No change there, and with that we can get right into the Junior Tournament Pokemon Cup of World Junior? For the most part, this goes according to the original timeline plans. Ash doesn't have Leavanny, so calls on Snivy in round 1 instead, and Silent's more reliant on Ducklet, but other than that, the paths to the final go exactly the same. In the semi-finals, Trip defeats Silent's Ducklet with Superior, and Ash's Croc evolves into everyone's favourite Irishman to help defeat Iris' newly
favorite
called
Irishman.
Dragonite. This time around though, Ash doesn't select Pignite in the final round because it's not his Pokemon. That would be really weird. Instead, he uses Blastoise against Trip's Superior, and for the 3rd time, Ash's Water-type reigns supreme. Using Dig to avoid Solar Beam and close the distance, Blastoise surfaces to strike with a devastating Ice Punch that knocks out Superior. Trip insists that Ash got lucky again, and next time he'll be more prepared. Ash is officially the Junior Tournament Pokemon Cup of World Junior Champion, and as a reward for winning, he gets another battle with Alder. This time around, Alder stays awake for the entire battle, so it's a lot closer than their first face-off. Alder's Bouffalante is a bit of a one-trick buffalo as it only ever attacks with Head Charge. Ash does manage to use Dig as a way to dodge for the first part of the battle, but once Alder realizes his strategy, he finds a workaround for it. Blastoise does connect with a Hydro Pump early on, but Bouffalante seems largely unfazed. When Head Charge does eventually strike Blastoise, the Water Starter even succeeds in leaving something on Bouffalante with a Sideswipe Ice Punch. That exchange deals a whole lot more damage to Blastoise though. When the second Head Charge lands, it's more than Blastoise can take, knocking him out, but the recoil almost does away with Bouffalante too. The Bash Buffalo Pokemon can barely get back to its feet to celebrate the narrow victory. Alder heaps praise on Ash and Blastoise, admitting that it's very rare for Bouffalante to even tire slightly from his battles. Before leaving Lacunosa Town, Ash, Iris, and Silent meet Cameron, who's perpetually late and currently irrelevant, but again, may as well introduce him now to save time later. Okay, now we've got all the stuff with Meloetta, Ridley, Team Rocket, and the forces of nature. Even though it almost leads to the destruction of Unova, it's ultimately sort of inconsequential in the long term for Ash, so I'm just gonna skip it. It did happen though. We even got to see Giovanni battling with Persian, so that was neat. Anyway, the conclusion sees Giovanni and Team Rocket retreating to Kanto, their Unova plans having failed, but they were closer to succeeding than usual, so you've gotta give them some credit. Alright, that almost takes us into the Virtuous Conference. On the way to Virtuous City, Ash and friends encounter Virgil in the Pokemon Rescue Squad. Virgil uses a team of Eevee and Eeveelutions, and he's qualified for the Unova League too, so probably worth mentioning him.
Wow.
That's it though. We've finally made it to the Virtuous Conference. After failing to win the Sinnoh League, it's been a long-term plan for Ash to make use of his entire Pokemon roster here rather than focusing on just Unova captures.
That's good.
Trip, Bianca, Stefan, Cameron, and Virgil all enter the Virtuous Conference alongside Ash, with Trip being drawn against him in the preliminary round. It'll be a one-on-one battle which will send the loser home. No second chances. As you might expect from the two, Trip selects Superior and Ash chooses Blastoise for the win-or-go-home matchup. Trip starts the battle by calling for Sunday as Ash instructs Blastoise to use Dig. By the time Blastoise emerges from beneath the ground, Serperior has positioned itself perfectly and strikes with Dragon Tail. Blastoise is knocked back but recovers quickly to counter with a Hydro Pump that Serperior doesn't even dodge. Instead, the Grass Snake stands his ground to fire back a Solar Beam. As Sunny Day is active, Serperior took no time to charge up the attack, so scores a direct hit on Blastoise. The battle has barely begun and already Trip is in complete control.
Definitely Blastoise.
Ash attempts various strategies to close the distance for an Ice Punch, but Serperior is always ready for Blastoise after Dig. The best Ash can hope for is landing weakened Hydro Pumps, which are barely dealing any damage thanks to Sunny Day. After managing to dodge a couple more Solar Beams with Dig and using the move more defensively, Ash and Blastoise outlast Sunny Day. As Trip calls for Serperior to bring back the Blinding Sun, Ash sees an opening calling for an Ice Punch. Blastoise charges down Serperior as it sets up Sunny Day once more and swings for the fences. The Fierce Punch lands just before Serperior can dodge, but as he'd begun moving backward, it's a glancing blow at most. It still deals serious damage, but Serperior rallies to send a Solar Beam back in the other direction.
Oh no!
The distance between the two fully evolved starters is too small to allow Blastoise to react in time. The Solar Beam hits Blastoise full on, throwing him back towards Ash, unconscious. Trip grabs Serperior to celebrate as Ash falls to the ground. After just one battle in the Virtuous Conference, Ash is eliminated. Trip approaches Ash, who still collapsed in.
He gets eliminated in the first round in Unova? Just when I thought when you mentioned that Ash wasn't going to be a complete idiot, that would mean he would do a lot better against Trip, which he kind of still did, yes. He could have gotten past Trip in this story. Oh, come on, Into the Unknown. I was just thinking you were going to redeem Unova with your story, and I was feeling every grasp of everything you mentioned in your story so far. But here in Unova, oh man. I just hope you do well for Kalos, which will be for the next video. I hope so.
And tells him to get up. That somewhat helps Ash snap back to reality. After thanking Blastoise for his incredible effort, Ash congratulates Trip on the win.
Okay.
His rival admits that it's through his battles with Ash and Blastoise that he was able to grow along with Serperior. Their entire build for the Virtuous
I'll say one more thing before the video ends. I didn't like the story, but I liked the story at the same time. But here's my thing I will say about Trip. I actually like the development of Trip, showing that Ash was the reason why Trip had to push himself harder to become a better trainer to beat Ash. And he also told him to like get on your feet, stand up. That type of tough love is what you're going to need. And I really did respect that type of development for Trip in this story. I do.
Was designed around preparing to finally defeat Ash and Blastoise. Then Trip shakes Ash's hand and leaves. Iris and Silent attempt to console Ash, but the next few days pass in the blink of an eye. Ash can barely focus on the battles happening in front of him, instead ruminating on the nature of his loss. While Trip grew from each of his defeats, Ash stayed stagnant, allowing his rival to overtake him. Sending Blastoise into battle without a plan B against Serperior was a massive error. By the time Cameron takes down Trip in the quarterfinals, Ash has come to accept his defeat, knowing that learning from this is the only way to grow as a trainer. The Virtuous Conference Final Four plays out just as it did in the original timeline, with Virgil and Team Eevee eventually being crowned champions. Then, all of the friends and foes gathered in Virtuous City go their separate ways, leaving only Ash, Iris, and Silent. They settle on returning to November Town to see Professor Juniper before deciding where they'll head next. Their meeting with the professor sets them on a path to the White Ruins, where they hope to see Reshiram, but this could mostly be skipped. Yes, this is where we meet N, and everyone loves a bit of natural Gropius, but there's nothing massively important in here. Ash does bring Charizard back onto his team for a bit.
That was actually a good episode there.
That's it. Ultimately, Team Plasma show up and get arrested. Okay, back to November Town. Ash decides it's time to return to Kanto, and Iris and Silent agree to accompany him. Not really knowing how he's going to get back to Kanto, Juniper suggests they travel through the Decalore Islands on their way, which sounds good to Ash. Again, the Decalore Island arc is mostly filler. On Harvest Island, Ash and friends meet Alexa, a journalist from Kalos with spectacular taste. She joins the trio on their journey back to Kanto, and that's really about it. Oh, also Claire shows up and catches a shiny Druddigon. That takes us back to Kanto, though. Did I just cover 30 episodes in a minute? Yeah, sorta, but you really didn't miss much. Pretty much the instant Iris and Silent set foot in Kanto, they decide it's time to leave. Iris wants to visit Claire in Blackthorn City, while Silent set on competing in a fishing competition in Hoenn. That's what they say anyway. I think they just didn't like Kanto. Or Ash. Level 2. Anyway, they say their goodbyes and part ways, sure to meet again someday.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Everything is being anti-Ash, whether high-key or low-key, from any friend that's around Ash. Well, they won't be considered friends of Ash if they never really liked him. But me, personally, if I was in Ash's shoes, I really wouldn't want no companion to travel with, especially if I know that they're either real or fake, which can't really decide that. But if I know that they were being phony, there's no reason I would just feel like I'll be alone without any friends to travel with, because I'll have my Pokemon with. That is if I were in Ash's shoes.
Ahead for Pallet Town. Once they make it there, Ash checks in with his mom, Professor Oak, and all of his Pokemon, then announces that he'll be going straight on to Kalos with Alexa. Blastoise is the only Pokemon who he decides to take, promising that in Kalos he won't let him down.
Ooh, Kalos!
Alexa informs Ash that her sister is a gym leader, and if he intends to compete in the Kalos League, that's where he should start.
Okay, that was What If Ash Woke Up on Time in the Unova series. And I'm gonna be honest here. I kind of thought that Ash wouldn't be on full idiot mode. He would actually do a lot better in this story than he actually did in the anime. Because it ended up showing that he actually did better in the anime than he did in the story, despite nerfing Ash's experiences as a trainer that happened in the original. But other than that, it was still an interesting story. But comment below if you guys want me to continue with this series, or you have something you want me to react to. Anything that pertains to Pokemon or anything else you guys want me to react to. Other than that, this is Mr. Antcredible, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace.